All right, here we are. It's it's Giving Tuesday, and Jeff had the idea that Darnisha and team had the idea that maybe we should stream a little bit and say a few things about World in Conversation, because we're in a campaign right now trying to kind of keep things going, and I could talk a little bit about what that is and how it's related to Social 19. And yeah, and all that's about, so I'm going to do that in a second, although martial law has been declared in South Korea, and it's kind of the Korean parliament just voted, I think Jeff just said, I'm not looking at the news, but like 190-0 to lift the martial law. It's a political move on the part of the president. He's I can say that they're kind of at a political stalemate in South Korea right now, and with the legislature and so on, it's complicated. A lot of fighting. I mean, governments go through these times when people on different political parties work together more smoothly or less smoothly. And right now they're in a very jagged period of time, very disruptive, very unable to really work together. It's a thing, right? I mean, things flow. It's like a river, right? Sometimes you kind of get to the rapids and things get a little rough, and then it smooths out, and that's just kind of how it is. But there's nothing really serious, dangerous happening. The president is making the proclamation that the Democrat, what is their Democratic Party, the opposition party, is just kind of making it impossible to govern, and then, of course, making the country more unsettled, right? And it's claiming it's a dangerous situation because of threats from the north and so on. So it's largely a power move. And I talked to my one colleague in Korea just a little bit ago, who was at a restaurant/bar, and people were kind of arguing about it mostly, but most people were really not paying attention. Just kind of, I mean, they were very much paying attention, but arguing that it was unnecessary or something, but but again, it's a problem, right? I mean, whenever a government, political factions within a government get to a place where they can't really work together, especially in critical times, and that's a really critical time for countries everywhere, but it's certainly in South Korea because of the Trump administration that's going to start in January, and it's going to have implications for the Korean government and Korean business. So in lots of different ways, we have a lot of troops there. President Trump has threatened to, double or triple the cost of having those troops. So they're going to pay a lot of money or pull them out or this or that. And, and the tariffs would impact Korea tremendously. So there's a lot happening. So it's a problem that when politicians can't, really see eye to eye and work together. And, we see it here. People fight over some of the really dumbest things, inconsequential things. And that's, of course, where World in Conversation comes in, because we are. So what this is, World in Conversation. If you go, you can go to see it. Jeff's not here, just working on getting another computer up and running, but it is. Wait, I can put it in the chat. I can do that. How about that? I'll put the link in and kind of give you a sense of what this is, because it's kind of it's a very cool organization that Lori and I started. And here, I'm going to put the link in. There you go. The martial law was lifted in 3 hours. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's a thing, right? Again, a political move. It should say that the current, it's a problem, right? And yeah, the current Korean president has pretty low approval ratings, and so that also contributes to some of what this is. And so it's unfortunate. I don't wade into Korean politics, so I can't figure out politics in my own country, let alone try to figure them out in South Korea. So I don't weigh in on things. So even I have a lot of thoughts about many things, but I don't really talk about them publicly because it doesn't make sense for me to do that. That's not my space in South Korea, is to really talk about culture and sociology. So that's kind of the area of Korean life that I inhabit. And so it's better if we just do that. So I'm not going to say much more than I just said. Okay. But okay, Giving Tuesday, World in Conversation. So Social 119 as a class was always large. The very first semester that I taught the course, it was 150 students. This was in the fall of 1991. And immediately after class, after the first even few classes, students started to congregate in the front of the room after class, and there was no one in the room after us, so there was a lot of space or time to do that, and they were just having these conversations, and sometimes it would be 5 or 10, and sometimes even 15 students just standing around talking. And eventually, a couple students said, "Hey, we really need to do this. Like, we need space to have smaller group conversations," because it's a big classroom. Well, 150 students, it's small compared to what the size of it looked like that very front middle section in 100 Thomas, where I currently teach. So I asked the class, how many of you, if we opened a 1-credit course, how many of you would want to join next semester if you were in the class next semester? And enough people raised their hand. So I said, all right. So we did. And then I needed people to lead the groups. And so I recruited 5 students who were in the class to do that. And they just kind of were at the kind of head of in the group, just kind of getting things started. And then they just had conversations. And we did that for a few years. And then I realized, wait a minute, these people need some kind of training. These people who are going to be in this space of this leadership space, TA space, whatever. So I had somebody that I was working with, another student, who met with them once a week, and they talked about how to make their groups better and this kind of thing. But then Lori and I, this was Lori's area of focus, and Lori's my wife. And she has her master's in social work, but with an emphasis on groups that she completed before she came to Penn State. And she's the reason I came to Penn State, because she came here when I went to South America doing my research in Ecuador. And so she came here. Anyway, was also doing group work here. She was teaching a class on groups. And so I recruited her to start training facilitators. And so she would recruit people from the class, give them more training about how really to do this, lead a group, and facilitate a group is the word she started to use. And that went on until, through the 90s. And the class slowly grew. I mean, it grew to 240 students, then 275. Then at one point it was 375. I mean, it was, but then it sort of topped off at that. And so when at one point in around the year 2000, 2001, there was a big kind of uprising here at Penn State based on race issues. And so some people, donors, alumni who were also donors, they were unhappy with the way that Penn State dealt with things. And they had heard about Social 19 back then. Again, we weren't on YouTube, and this was before the internet, right? So, it was just as the internet was kind of really starting to take off. anyway, they met. They asked to meet with me, and so they said, "Hey, what would you do if you you got some money from the outside?" And I said, "Well, I would take these facilitators that we have, and that we use in Social 19, and I would put them out. I would give them further training, and I would have them run groups around campus for other students and people who are not just in the class." And they said, "Okay, that sounds great. Let's do it." So they gave some money, and we started an organization called Race Relations Project. And within 5 years, we were doing. So this was in the fall of 2001. Within 5 years, or 2002, I guess, is when we started. Within 5 years, we were moving on to a lot of topics beyond race relations. And so we changed the name to World in Conversation and became a center. And so that's how World in Conversation started in the fall of 2002. So we've been going for, we're on our 23rd year. And the center grew a lot. And we took on lots of different topics, lots of issues. We've had thousands of students who have been trained as facilitators. And it's been an awesome journey. I think we decided something like 50,000 students have gone through the program. And so anyway, let me bring Lori in. I think Lori's ready to get. Well, we'll ask her about it. Yo, what's up? And DJ, how you got?
I'm a little short.
Wait, where are we getting? We can like hug each other.
All right.
I'm gonna come down here. What are you talking about?
I was just introducing, like how I was just saying how we started World in Conversation, from Social 19 and Race Relations Project and so on. And I haven't talked directly of how it's currently directly connected to Social 19 and what we do and different projects we've done or different initiatives we've done. But I kind of got to the place where we grew into the largest center of its kind based at a university.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing 3,000 dialogues a year. And a dialogue is a 90-minute conversation with two facilitators and talking about various issues that are of concern and interest to people.
But what's hard to see, one is that all of your Social 19 students have been in these dialogues with student facilitators for 25 years or maybe closer to 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's not been visible, but more excitingly than that is how profound that experience is for student facilitators, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, a dialogue, blah, blah, blah. It just sounds so like even-handed, but it is proven to be really deep and moving and robustly impactful for alumni who come back to us and tell us how they use the skills every day. But as students, it proves to be a really profound experience with lots of learning and really the kind of education that we all want, which is hands-on and transforms you when you look back and say, whoa, this is who I am now after I've done this.
And education that people who watch the Social 19 stream, who really enjoy the stream, the education that they appreciate, which is critical thinking and thinking outside the box and thinking about things in new ways and this kind of stuff.
That's one part that a facilitator helps a group to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the facilitator themselves is having this profound experience of learning of what it means to truly work with people, individual people with different ideas from each other, people who don't like each other, people who can't see each other. What is compassion? It brings so many things. I want DJ to weigh in.
Yeah. No, I want to actually introduce the two of you. So Lori, if anyone doesn't know you, I mean, you're the director of World in Conversation. And so, and DJ, you are the chief of staff at World in Conversation. The two of you are like this, and you've been really running the show.
Yep.
For 15 years or so. I don't know. It's been
I think it is almost 15, right, for you?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this threesome right here is a very huge partnership that none of this would have happened without the three of us.
No, so pretty cool. But DJ, what's the thing that, so these are, so the student, the people.
Can I say one thing to bring DJ in? Because when I posted about Giving Tuesday yesterday, I kind of had this snarky comment where I was like, everybody says we need to talk, but they don't realize that actually people have to pay for that. Like, it doesn't happen, like everything, nothing happens for free. And so that's why we are in the Giving Tuesday pool, because we think this is something people just don't ever think that needs to be paid for, mostly because they never have the experience, because there aren't enough facilitators in the world. Okay, so DJ has been doing this work and building facilitators for all these years. So just what's your take?
I was thinking about what I received when I was a student and I was first participating in the dialogues and taking Social 19, and then chose to, audition or try out to be a facilitator, and just feeling seen. Like, there's something about being a person with a complex identity, or multiracial, or a person who his parents were immigrants, but I grew up here, but also have this indigenous side. And at the same time, I grew up in Washington, D.C., where I was interacting with a lot of people who are coming from different backgrounds. And I kind of thought coming into college, I was pretty grounded in what it means to be diverse and how to interact with people. But for some reason, being in those small groups and having a facilitator, not just like hanging out with friends, but having facilitators who were my peers, coupled with the class and then later trainings, it was just a profound way of feeling seen, because I was able to talk about not just what I think about issues, but there's this principle in facilitation training about support and challenge everyone. Right? Like, we're not just, as facilitators, you don't just pick and choose some things to challenge. You have to support and challenge everyone. And somehow that helped me be seen, because I wasn't always taken as the expert just because I'm a woman and we were talking about certain issues, or I just could also be supported because every person made what that conversation was.
And then doing that for other people too, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think,
awesome.
Sam, you kind of show that in your class, which sometimes I'm sure is misunderstood. Because where you're like, challenging a white student about race, challenging a Black student about race, challenging an immigrant about race, right? You're like, or supporting what they say and drawing out what they say, right? So people are seeing in your classroom in a large stage, the things that DJ is talking about, how impactful that is to not just be seen as the immigrant or the new American or the whatever, the woman, the white person. And so you're showing what facilitators are really learning how to do. And that's not what we know, is that that's not intuitive. Most people are like, oh, we can't ask this person this question. We can't challenge this. No, you actually have to.
Exactly.
More than that, build the world together, right? Well, that's really what we're trying to do.
I think the thing is, there's so many layers of conversation that like when I think about the class, like the larger class, and I think about the conversations that I have with students, there's so many layers of that. Wow, like if you're watching, you don't realize the things that you're not going to think about, the things that I'm thinking about at every moment. Who I choose to be up there. Once I meet them, I don't know who they are, and I meet them and class is starting, and they introduce themselves, and I get their energy, and they say a couple things right away. I'm shifting the questions I'm going to ask them. I'm shifting where the conversation is going to go, because I got to adapt to who people are. And I think, like DJ, when you were saying about, wow, you came off to college and you have this identity and you're thinking about these things, and you're you think you're thinking about things.
Yeah, you think you're exactly.
But then it shifts, right? Like you have to really, you're changing the way you engage, and that happens to everybody. And so I think that going back to what you said, Lori, it's like everybody says we need to talk, we need to have conversations, but if people stop and ask, like, what are the conversations that they've had about complex issues or some of these tough, difficult issues that really went well? And the answer they're going to give is that there was somebody in the conversation who was really helping to steer it in a good direction. It didn't turn into a shouting match. One person didn't dominate. One person didn't put everybody else to sleep. I mean, there was somebody in the room, one of the members of the conversation, who helped to make it go really well.
And that is mostly luck.
Yeah, that's luck.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Also, like, the work that we need to do with each other in the world is long term, right? It's not one conversation. And so, yeah, you might be lucky. And certainly we are at times to have that. But what we're doing is trying to build people and a profession that doesn't have to be based on luck, because it is a lot of work to understand the dynamics of a group, right? You've got individual people, you've got issues, the complexity of issues, and then you have a group, a small group, different than your class, a public stage, a small group where things are happening in there that are unique to the fact that a group is really kind of an organism in itself that has to be understood and managed. And you don't just deal with a group based on the issues or the individuals, right? There's also learning how to manage a group. And those things are just invisible to most people, because most things are invisible to most of us unless we kind of dive in and study it, right? Which is why we think having something like this at a university is a really good thing, because you do have the time to study, practice, study, yada, yada, you know? And so anyway, just to say, like, what you're doing in your class is a good example of some of the things, but what happens in a small group and has to happen is a much deeper and harder, more complicated engagement. And that's how you start to untangle the issues, and also why the facilitators have such a profound experience. The student facilitators at Penn State have such a profound learning experience, because they're responsible, especially when they're doing these semester-long dialogues, which did a lot.
Oh my God. So listen, DJ, let me just say this and then you can respond to it, please. So people have the idea. Sam,
real quick, I'm going to go out and let DJ be here. And then I wanted also to bring in a couple other staff members, because why not? Is that okay with you?
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to, how long? Anyway, just go ahead.
You know, people have the idea that a university, what's our university's budget? Like $2 billion or something like that. Our operating, isn't it like 1.8 billion or something?
I think it's around there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So people have the idea that the way a university, we have tons of money. We have all sorts of money, and that, you just get money, and that's how it works. Well, we over, going back to the 2002, my primary job and DJ's primary job we worked together to figure out how to fund this endeavor. And again, we were running 3,000 dialogues a year at our peak, which is just an incredible, it's so many more, thousands more, probably like 2,500 more than the next largest program at a university in the world, right? Yeah. But you and I figured out how to go around the university and just get sums of money from different places and bring that in and fund this thing and make it work. And then when COVID hit, the university restructured, and it turned out that the things that you and I had chosen very successfully, man, we were really successful in raising a lot of money year after year. We built a really nice budget. I don't know what it was at the peak, maybe like 600,000 or something like that. But we just were unlucky, and all the main 2/3 of the sources of that funding just got chopped because the university reorganized how things were doing. So it doesn't work that you just go to the central administration. Everybody's going to the central administration demanding money. And so, we have to try to figure out how to fund it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
Grab my phone.
You can come and say hi.
DJ, can you say just a word about that?
Yeah, I'll just you can come. You can say hi too, Pedro.
Hey, Sam.
And you may or may not know some of what I'm about to say because Sam was just talking about how Penn State's a really big institution. We've got over $1 billion budget or so, and some people. You think when you're working part of this institution, others on the outside will assume everyone's part of that big venture, that big moneymaker in some way. But this is actually a rugby football. But I think it's kind of like a metaphor because one of the things that's most front facing about academics is our sports and our football, which makes a whole other set of money. And now, even college students who are athletes and are professionals, even though they're in college, can also individually make money now, right? Yeah. And some might not recognize that us as a center have to raise our own funds. And sometimes that money comes from the outside through grants or gifts, like today on Giving Tuesday. It makes a big difference. And some of that came from the work that you were just talking about, Sam, that you and I, when we went to different colleges all around the university, right? Every college has its own budget. And we're saying, hey, if your students participate in this, this is what they'll receive. They're going to feel seen. They're going to have exchanges that they normally wouldn't have. There are going to be more people who have these facilitation skills in the world. And all of these different colleges agreed to partner with us and give a little bit of money. Those relationships don't exist as of last year or coming into this year. And so Giving Tuesday and every gift right now is even more, is more potent in our budget, has even that much more impact because we're not cushioned by as much internal funding within the university. So that's just a little bit of background on it. But I'm happy to introduce Pedro right here, who is now a graduate student in the College of Education and is doing our assistantship with us and has been working with World in Conversation as a student for now 5 years, right? You did your You were
2019 was the first time, but I took a couple of breaks in between. So it's probably around four and a half. Yeah.
Hey, Pedro, what did you get out of? How has becoming a facilitator really just shifted the way you see the world around you?
Yeah, that's a big
You're
one.
now one of our.
I'm still discovering all the ways.
I think I have a starting point.
And you are, I should say, by the way, you've been one of our trainers for the past couple of years, so training people. But how has that really shifted?
Yeah, to me, it was right in the beginning of my America experience of just transitioning countries and learning a new language. And that's a part of learning languages that people don't really talk about, which I find really interesting, is not just knowing the grammar and the syntax of words and places where it goes, but there's ways in the culture to communicate and really be able to connect, right, with someone from outside. So for the first couple of years that I was in the States, it was very hard to connect and make friends and interact. The world was not interactable for me. And I feel like facilitating the world became interactable. And I could open things up and learn more and, have relationships with people too, which I'm really interested in that segment of language of just that is just not taught. I took English classes all growing up. And I felt like I was fluent when I got here, because I knew the words and I knew how to read and
you even change your tone.
Right. But like talking to people is a whole different thing. So that's the beginning of
That's a big statement.
And that was with you, DJ. That was like it was with DJ. It was my trainer for Social 19.
So I have something. One of the things that I think I haven't talked about, or we haven't talked about, is the ways in which Social 19 and World in Conversation are directly linked, right? The Social 19 budget is really the World in Conversation budget.
Yeah, it's one
And
budget. Yeah.
yeah, and so once again, even with Social 19, like people who watch the stream, and I'll get emails from people. In fact, I get a couple every day from people around the world, and they're like, "Oh man, I really appreciate how well done. Tell your team they do a great job." I mean, it's like a TV, it's a production, switching cameras and all sorts of things, and like again, when you're at a massive university like Penn State, the assumption is just that these things get paid for, but they only get paid for when someone decides they're actually going to pay for them. They're going to take money out of the budget that could go anywhere around the university, and they're going to give it to us. And so people watch and they think, well, of course Penn State is would fund Social 19, and of course it would fund something like World in Conversation, that you're having these really cool conversations that everybody wants to have. And it's like, but it doesn't work that way. It's not, of course.
And as someone who's in the audience of Social 19 and having these feelings of seeing the production and being like, wow, these are all students putting together a TV show on YouTube. And it's just the mics and the cameras, cuts and all the things. And I have that same thought. And so why are we not getting them? Like, why they don't want to fund it? I don't know.
Why wouldn't we have more money than we need?
Too. Yeah. I don't know. I've been trying to understand that.
Yeah. Well, it's not that people don't. It's the problem everywhere, right? That there's everybody. This is what happens I talk about this a lot with politicians, right? The reason people say, "Oh, all politicians lie." Well, no, it's not that they're lying. It's just that when they're politicking, when they're campaigning, they have so many people asking them for things and to spend money on things, and everything is good. It's like, yeah, I'll spend money on that. I support that, and I support this and that and this and that. And then they get into office and realize, wait, I can't follow through on all these promises that I made, because they're all really important and really valuable, but not everybody can be satisfied. And that's what happens at this university. There are lots of really cool programs like ours, and there aren't many classes like Social 19. Well, there aren't any other classes like Social 19, but nonetheless, there are other places to spend money, and so it's really hard. It's what we're
So reaching out like this and showing people a little bit more about how it works, not just with politicians, but like also with at university settings. We're just trying to say, like, fund something, help us out in a way that we can't always do on our own. It's okay for us to reach out, and it doesn't mean that the university that we're at doesn't care about us either. There's a lot of good work here. So.
It just means that we're
just to follow that, because it's a chance. I was hearing from you, Sam, too, of the priorities, and it's hard to prioritize and know who to prioritize. And I was thinking of the campaign and asking for money on the internet for my friends, and it's awkward, and I don't want to do it. But at the same time, I did realize it's just a chance to prioritize something that matters a little bit more, like a $5 donation or a small thing. And what does that do for me as a person? It's just, I don't know, trying to be a human and be aligned with my morals, or without religion, or I don't know, because I'm not a religious person. But, I got to prioritize the things that matter to me. And money seems to be a way that we get to make decisions in the world, and leverage that. So a chance to make action through priorities, the things that we think are important, which is the polarity that we just hear everybody talking about. Whenever you talk about World in Conversation to your friend, everybody gets so excited about how someone's doing something about this,
Yeah. So we really appreciate, for those of you who are giving and gifting, really appreciate.
Well, one of the other
describing.
The other thing that is so fascinating for me is that there really aren't a lot of spaces in the world for people to have, a lot of just these critical conversations, that are really touchy and really edgy, and there aren't a lot of spaces for
Wait, real quick, we just pulled up our Giving Tuesday page, and we just hit the 10% mark of our goal today. So that's
Oh, dude,
so
all
we're
right.
That's pretty cool.
celebrating. That's awesome. Thanks everyone who's been donating. 10% with 10 donors. That's incredible. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, part of what this is though is like we have to convince Penn State that we have a certain amount of support from
Yeah.
the outside, right? That allows them to say like, okay, well, we'll support you from the inside too. So we don't have to generate all of our money. We just have to generate enough interest that they can say like, all right, you guys. And it's so funny, man. People assume that, of course, people would support this, right? Like we're putting people in rooms or in a big classroom to have conversations about topics that people do not talk about in public settings, right?
Mhm.
And yet, yeah, I don't know. That's what that's I don't know. It blows my mind sometimes. Yeah, that's Pedro, the by-side legend. Cairo 173 says.
Cheers, Cairo.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Well,
awesome.
all right.
And there's
I know-
also, I'll tune my own horns just because of the opportunity of being talking to who's in the stream too, and the program of like, we're also creating the space for these conversations for the people that are, coming and through the program and our partners.
Yeah.
But the development that is happening at the personal level at the facilitation training is just, I feel really blessed and honored to have the opportunity to be a trainer, because what you see happen over a period of one semester is really cool, but also we have 6-7 students right now that are finishing at 3 semester, getting the certificate and getting to see their journey of becoming communicators and taking those risks to lead those conversations that are tricky, but are so fun and so important and so like innate part of being human, of wanting to, like what's going on with all this stuff. And they're leading those spaces so beautifully, and like adults, they come in as emerging teenagers and they leave adults and ready to do cool stuff, and we talked to the alumni that came to class the other day, Jesse and Avery, and their work, and talking about how it's impacting other people, in their own fields. It's not just in this field that facilitation is
That's awesome.
working. So
it's really it's beautiful that you're naming what the facilitator experience is, but you're putting that inside of the fact that you're a trainer and you're honored to do that. You feel honored to like be part of that. Oh, look, and here's another trainer.
Hey, DJ, let me ask you though.
Yeah, and I'll introduce you.
What's up, Elijah?
What's up, Sam?
What's up? Hey, DJ, are there any small group conversations that we've recorded that are public or not? Do we do?
Yeah, we would take some time. It would take some time to share it, but yeah. Wait, what are you thinking? You got an idea?
Someone on the stream is just asking, like, hey, well, I watched the Social 19 class, but are there any other World in Conversation dialogues that actually could be observed or could be that we could watch?
We have footage of like the small dialogues, right? But nothing live. But are you asking for maybe
not live? Yeah, recorded. Yeah.
I was going to say everything. We're used to things that we can watch and get a gist of pretty quickly, and but our dialogues, because the format is 90 minutes and participants do go through a progression in it. We're still trying to find. I'll just say this: we're still trying to find. We've got a few great commercials, like one on our Giving Tuesday page, but we're still looking for really interested, creative videographers who can help edit and pare down our dialogues to make them more accessible, so that people can get a feel for some of the magic that's happening in less than 90 minutes.
Yeah. So in other words, we have, while we record every single dialogue, and we've done that for the past many years, we have like probably 15,000 or so recordings and in our somewhere stashed away in our cloud and our drives. We've not made any of those public. like a
Not a
single.
full 90 minutes, no.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I didn't think so. I thought at one point in time that we did have one that we just kind of put up back in the day, but maybe not. Maybe we did. And we took it.
The only public dialogue I can think of was the one that we filmed at WPSU.
269.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll try and find the link.
Well, next semester. Is
Got
what
it.
we're
Hey,
Would wait for that.
publish all of that. Yeah.
Maybe
Pedro.
peaks.
I mean,
Oh,
Elijah.
Elijah's here now. Pedro went to get
Listen.
ready for class.
All right.
Yeah.
Elijah, quick question for you.
So,
What is the, and then we'll just take a few more minutes, because this then will live on as on our page as a recording, and so we don't want it to go much longer than it will, because it'll be hard for people who won't watch it, and I want them to watch it. Elijah, when you think about some of the conversations, this idea that, we need to be talking about these issues, and of course, but we're not. People aren't talking about them because, in part, because they don't have a space to talk about them, and they don't have facilitators, right? So tell me what does a facilitator do that is so important when people are sitting around having conversations about controversial topics?
Oh, I love that. It's like you're like opening a little box. Okay, what do facilitators really do? Show us some of the magic.
Yeah. Okay. Finding the pearl, finding the oyster. All right. So, what facilitators do, I think, before we can focus on like what our facilitators do, I think it's important to think about like what maybe we see from dialogues that aren't facilitated, and dialogues that aren't facilitated by like a world in conversation facilitator. And a lot of times you can notice that we have terminology that like we like to use that help us like define and see things in the dialogue, and overall, I guess like big picture is like when we're trying to solve a problem or people are trying to solve a problem, and we don't have like a trained facilitator that truly like sees the dialogue in a certain way, then you're missing very important pieces of that conversation because of how the facilitator holds up everyone in the dialogue and allows every idea to be seen and heard, and allows for disagreement. Like a lot of time we see like conformity or things that like kind of prevent, that create echo chambers, right? Like if you look on our website, it says like beyond borders, beyond echo chambers, right? Because a trained facilitator doesn't allow for those things to happen and tries to create a functional group that is able to disagree and challenge and also be held up and their positions be seen before they're just like dismissed. So a facilitator is like really a world in conversation facilitator is focusing on a lot of the nitty-gritty details and like the risks and like if
You're saying it well.
Yeah.
No, this is very clear. So one of the things I heard you say, I think about most conversations that I'm in with 6 or 7 or 8 people that we're sitting around in a group of people. Someone's always dominating eventually, right? Someone's always droning on about whatever. Somebody's always there going to take it off topic. Somebody who is kind of quiet and shy or less or more reserved is not going to contribute. And then when they finally do contribute, they have something really interesting to say, and the whole group looks at them and says, "Why didn't you say that earlier?" Well, I didn't say it earlier because you other people are dominating the conversation. Right. So you don't have, and then it gets really frustrating. It's just so frustrating. I always walk away feeling like, God damn, that was a waste of time. But what go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're just like, after reading like I have all these new words now. Now that I've read like Laurie's book, and I can't wait to like read the edit. But there's all these words, and like you immediately make me think about like how we like to think that every single participant or person that's in a dialogue is coming with certain powers that come from like the outside, like social powers, like in terms of like gender, race, sex, like all of these different like sociological positions that we all have kind of also enter the dialogue. They don't go away when they enter the dialogue. And then you just have like people like personality, people that are more introverted or extroverted that like to dominate or monopolize, right? And so they call, then like Laurie talks about that as like asymmetry and like all the way we want a dialogue that's like symmetrical, right? Because when it's like asymmetrical, then you have, like you said, the one person being checked out, another person speaking, you're like, well, this dialogue felt kind of pointless because not everybody was involved or included. And then so a facilitator like creates that symmetry.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. That's well said. Hey DJ, how this in the chat, Chris is asking, he's saying he's really curious, or she curious about how facilitators help keep provocative conversations on the rails. Like from going.
One you might be surprised about is that in provocative conversations, at least in the society that we're all living in right now, people often don't actually take strong positions. And one of the skills that facilitators have to practice is helping people take positions.
Why don't they take strong positions?
Because one, they don't want to look stupid.
They don't want conflict.
Yeah. 2, they don't want conflict with someone else in the room. 3, they may, when we've done our research on our groups, one of the resounding things people walk away with is that they have confidence to have another conversation. And I think a lot of the time, people just haven't had an experience where they can get into it about provocative conversations and know that it's going to be all right. And again, a facilitator helps do that. And so if we have been able to accomplish people really speaking from their positions and their experiences, what they see, what are skills that facilitators do or practice to keep that conversation going? Well, you want to share?
Okay, so what are the skills? And
or maybe Chris is asking about tactics too.
Okay, so can you ask me? Okay, so just how do we maintain or hold conversations that are
maybe another thing I'll quickly
you guys have to stay in the center.
Sorry.
I think too, when the conversation is provocative, we have to also remember that a facilitator mindset is meant to be curious the whole time. And so when so-called provocative conversations are happening, we're not approaching it in a way where we've already judged the conversation to be provocative. We're looking for common themes and threads that connect people. We're looking for differences in the group, and we're trying to work and bring up those differences so that ideas can be questioned and supported. So I guess sometimes like when people ask, because I used to get asked that all the time. Okay, how do you work with provocative conversation? I'm like, provocative. What's provocative? Right. Everything's provocative. There's conflict everywhere. Really.
I think it's interesting to me how rare it is that people will really argue. Like, how often do you see people in these circles really argue with one another? It's rare.
Not often.
Yeah,
like, and that's where it's important to build like that trust and rapport where people can feel that it's like, because it's different when you're dealing with usually like college students, like you said. They're afraid to be stupid, or I'm sorry I swivel while I talk. They're like, they're afraid to be stupid, or they're not sure if it's like, mainly I would say like a lot of times it can be that, but you said other ones before. However, I just think it's also interesting because people will confuse like conflict it's like conflict is like neutral, right? It's like disagreeing is important. It's essential to like moving things forward. And so a facilitator understands that. It's like the mindset that, you disagreement doesn't mean like war, right? It's like when we don't allow ourselves to like be in a space to disagree and hold up those disagreements, be like, okay, this is true and this is true. So now what do we do, right? And like instead of like saying like one side's not true and one side is true. And so like it's the mindset work. It's like a big mindset work. Like skills are so important, but when you like yeah, when you
And that's what makes World in Conversation unique, because I think the other tactics or skills we would talk about in how to manage a provocative conversation would sound like everything else that you would read online or other practices. It would tell you about keeping calm. It would tell you about moderating effectively, asking person A to say what they heard from person B. We can practice all of that, but the mindset, the development of the mindset, evolving the mindset, that's actually what we learn first and what is more difficult and is worth donating to. I don't know.
yes,
Yeah. No, I think that everybody, anybody who's ever had a really cool conversation, again, I want to go back to something I said earlier, like a conversation that goes on for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours or something, with a group of friends or a group of people at the dinner table, right? Chris mentioned that it sounds like dinner table stuff. Anyone who's ever been in one of those conversations that is really, all right, see you,
getting the
Elijah.
class with the students.
All right, see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, bro. We know that it went well. They enjoyed it because people were able to say what they actually thought. People were able to disagree with one another, but the disagreement wasn't, game changing. It was the disagreement actually contributed to the awesomeness of the conversation, because you didn't have everyone just saying, one person says one thing and everyone else just says, oh, I agree with that. No, conversations get interesting when people disagree about things.
And new ideas can come out, because I think a lot of the time we associate disagreement with being shut down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not being shut down. And the role of facilitator is we are training people so that they reach in. But no, hang on. DJ, you were going to say something right there, but you held back. Why don't you say it? We really want to hear it. And then you say it, and other people say, oh, okay. Oh, all right. That's pretty cool. Man, it's so, Lori has the idea that every group that meets for some purpose, every group that meets should have a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anywhere that decisions are being made, a facilitator should be present. Help us make that vision come true, at least for another year.
Yeah. That's the thing. We're trying to survive for another year. You're like, oh my God. It's crazy. It's just like if you don't have any traffic signals and, you have like 5 roads that are coming into an intersection and there's no traffic signals. If you don't have a traffic cop there, it's just going to be a mess. And that's what facilitators do. It's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Hey, Derek, thanks for that. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, listen, let's just, we could cut, really, because we don't want to go too long. I think we've made a commercial. We'll be back on. I'm going to say a few things at the beginning of class today.
Wonderful. Thanks for that.
I know we're recruiting people, also facilitators for next semester.
Next generation. Yeah.
And I'll say a few things for the stream, and because we're on it at a different time right now, so we don't have very many people watching or anything. But people will watch the video, and then we'll see where we go.
I put in the comments in the live stream for the 119 channel, Mr. Beast, or sorry, not Mr. Beast, Mr. Beat is doing a Giving Tuesday stream. So if you guys wanted to go over there and show some love and say that we came from Social 119's channel, it would be something to make him smile. So.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Thanks, Mr. B.
All right, man. Yeah, Otto Frank from Amsterdam. Thanks. Yeah, so we'll be on today. Actually, we have a cool class scheduled. We'll be on again in 4.5 hours.
Yeah,
and we will.
And when we talk about, I love that Julie's putting on here that our donations help our global sites operate. I mean, this is a world in conversation, and the next segment, we can talk more about how our global sites are operating and the experience that's expanding around the world. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Man. Okay. Jeff, why don't you So anyway, we'll cut off, and I want to talk to DJ here for a second. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you a little later this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Mikhail.